if we don't have that time span between when we got rejected and when we got the blessing, we learn nothing. That time in between when we got rejected and when we got the blessing is where we learn the most, when we develop the most, when we grow the most, and when we appreciate the blessing even more. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Hood Soft Life Podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina, and in this podcast, we talk about navigating the challenges that come with growing up in the hood and leaving those challenges behind for us soft life. Growing up in the hood has its own set of challenges, but what people don't tend to tell you is not only do those challenges follow you once you've made it out physically, but they tend to intensify. So, I'm bringing you along on my journey. I'm going to be honest with you about the struggles and the lessons that I'm learning to achieve a soft life. In this episode, we're going to be talking about rejection. Let's face it, we've all been there, we've all struggled with rejection, and it's a hard pill to swallow. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about some of the ways that I've been working on reshifting my mindset around rejection and just the overall conversation about how we got to this place where rejection is something that we take so personally. So let's get started. All right, y'all, if you're watching this on YouTube, I look a little different this week. I got my hair done. I got myself a nice little silk press. So, go on YouTube and check it out if you never do. I look very different, in my opinion. I got my hair cut and, I'm just really feeling myself. Took care of myself this week and I'm really happy about it. I'm really happy with the results. But if you see me fidgeting throughout this episode, like moving it around and stuff, it's because I'm not used to the hair, like, being on my back and on my neck and stuff, so I'm a little annoyed with it at times, but I still love to look at myself in the mirror and in the viewfinder, so you will catch me taking a little glimpse here and there. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about it. Rejection. We've all been there. We've all been rejected from our dream home, our dream job, our dream school, the crush we had for the last 3 years. We've all been there, okay? Like, it's okay. And I feel like a lot of the times we don't talk about how challenging it is to deal with rejection and the struggles that we face internally with rejection. If you're one of those people who can handle rejection really well, applause to you. I'm not shading you in any way, shape, or form. Come teach us. Okay? Because some of us are still learning. Some of us are still very new on the journey, and that's okay. There's no shade to that either. There's always room to grow. So let's just go ahead and talk about it. The negative connotation that comes with rejection, I feel like in society, a lot of the times we're taught that, like, if you get rejected by something or someone, it's automatically about you. It has something to do with you. It has something to do with, like, something that you lack. And I feel like rejection is very much tied to, like, self-esteem and self-worth. And so, like, if you get rejected by something or someone, then that means that your self-worth is less than, because why didn't this person accept me to be their friend or their partner or whatever, or even a family member? Why didn't I get this job? Why didn't I get this apartment if all my things are in check? I make the amount of money, I have the credit score that they asked for, whatever the case may be. Why didn't I get this thing? And when you get rejected by something or someone, it is so easy to feel like, well, damn, like, what's wrong with me? What did I do for me to not get this thing that I wanted? Especially when it's something that you wanted so badly, like a job. When you get rejected by a job that you want so badly, and maybe you put your eggs all in one basket, and then to feel like, okay, like, damn, I didn't get this job. Like, what am I supposed to do now? That's a hard pill to swallow, like, in all honesty. And let's talk about some of the other things that, you could be struggling with rejection. Like, if, for example, let's go down the route of, like, a future apartment, a future job, or, like, a school. If you got rejected by any of those dream things, like your dream job, dream school, dream apartment, right? That delays future plans. So if you have it in your mind of, like, oh, I want to live in this apartment, or I want to go to this school and study this thing, or I want to have this job and create these types of opportunities for myself. When you get rejected from those things, now that puts all your future plans at a pause, because it's like, okay, I really had my heart and my mind set on this place. And even if I did have options in the background, like, this was the place that I had my heart and my mind set on. And let's be real, when you have your heart and your mind set on something, you start thinking about, like, okay, if it works out right, or when it works out right, then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, right? If I get this apartment in downtown Houston, just something random. If I get this apartment in downtown Houston, let me start looking about some of the things that they have over there. Okay, they have this nice gym. I'm going to get a membership at this gym. And I know that this apartment is a couple of miles away from the supermarket, from the store, from whatever the case may be. This is a great location for me. This apartment is a great location for me, whatever. That you get that phone call and it says like, unfortunately, we can't lease this apartment to you. We've leased it to somebody else, whatever the case may be. And now you're feeling like, well, damn, like I really had my heart and my mindset on this place. I had plans, I was thinking about all the fun things I was going to be able to do once I moved to downtown Houston. And now that I didn't get this apartment, I feel like I have to start over. And that's another thing that comes with rejection, right? Is like, if you have your heart and your mindset on something, again, even if you have a backup plan, now you feel like you have to come up with a whole new game plan to figure out how you're going to get back to where you wanted to go, right? And it's hard. It's hard when you get rejected by the dream thing, especially because it's like you really have your heart, your mind invested into this thing or into this person, whatever the case may be. And now you feel like, I don't really know what to do. I have to start all over again. And it can be hard and it can be extremely overwhelming because you already had an idea in place of how this was going to work out, of how this was going to go. So to know that it didn't work out that way and that you have to start all over is like, okay, especially if you don't even know what went wrong or why you got rejected. Like with the dream apartment, for example, let's say I wanted to move to downtown Houston and I got rejected for my dream apartment that was close to the dream gym that I wanted and all that extra stuff, right? But everything was in alignment with what they wanted. Like I had good credit, I made more than enough money to live there, X, Y, and Z, and I still didn't get the apartment. Starting a new game plan without knowing like why I didn't get this apartment, whether or not like without somebody getting it before me, right? They're just not going to give it to me. That makes it harder to start a new game plan because it's like, okay, I didn't know what stopped me from getting this apartment the first time. How do I know what to not do or not say or not put on, whatever the case may be, to make sure that I get the next one? Same thing with the dream school. Okay, I got rejected by my dream school and I have no idea why. I mean, I met the test requirements and I have good grades and I did all the extra stuff that I was supposed to do. And now I don't know what to do as I continue to apply to other schools to figure out where I want to go. And it might cause you to feel stuck because you have to start from scratch and you don't know what you did wrong. So now it's like, okay, how do I know that I'm not making the same mistake that I made the last time that had me fumble the bag with the last opportunity that I wanted? Or if you do know why you got rejected, like let's say I got rejected from my dream job and they told me why, like, oh, you just don't have this much experience, or oh, we're just looking for somebody a different culture fit, whatever the case may be. That's something that a lot of people are, using as an excuse nowadays. You're not a culture fit. Different conversation for a different day. All right. Sorry. I had a brief intermission. Somebody called in the middle of filming. But anyways, like I was saying, right, let's say I got rejected by my dream job because they said I don't have enough experience or they said that I'm not a culture fit, so on and so forth. Now I feel like when I'm coming up with this new game plan, even though now I know why I didn't get the job, I still might feel a little bit stuck because it's like now you have taken it upon yourself to feel like, okay, let's be honest, something is wrong with me. Something is wrong with the way that I talk or the way that I operate, the way that I look, whatever the case may be. That's why they wouldn't consider me a good quote unquote culture fit. Or like I don't have enough experience, and so how am I going to continue to apply for jobs like this one knowing that I didn't have enough experience for this job in particular? And that could cause us to feel like we don't know where to turn, we don't know where to go. But I just want to remind you before we move on, like that's just temporary. Like you just have to take the L and move on. Like it was a flop, it's okay, we can move on to the next thing. But it is hard, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, oh, it's that easy to just dust it off your shoulders and be like, okay, whatever, and move on. No, like we're all human, we're all gonna have feelings, and we're all gonna have emotions tied into the types of things that we're looking for, whether it's a job, a home, what else did I say, a school, or if it's even a person. Like we have these emotions tied into those things, and now we're too invested, and it's hard to like start again from scratch. I recently had an experience with rejection, if you couldn't tell, which is why we're doing this episode. I got rejected by what looked like my dream job on paper. And the reason I say it looked like is because I'll never really know if like that was the best fit for me, because I didn't get the job, I didn't get to experience it, or whatever the case may be, and that's okay. But on paper, this looked like everything that I wanted. Like, it was remote, it was aligned with my purpose, it paid very well, it gave me the freedom to travel, and it allowed me to speak on social justice issues and talk about social justice issues, which is something that I take very seriously, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. So to get the rejection email was very hard, and I'm not gonna lie, I was literally just talking to my friend on the phone, and then I just went dead silent because I was reading the email, and she's like, "Hello? Like, are you still there? Everything okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I just got the email from the job that I applied to and I didn't get it." And she's like, "Oh no, like I'm really sorry," supporting me and stuff. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like stuck, cuz I was just like, I I'm not going to lie. I thought I had that shit in the bag. Like, I am not sitting here saying like, I am all that in a bag of you know what? I take that back. I am all that in a bag of chips. So sorry. But anyways, the requirements for the job wasn't really in depth. So I think that left it open for a lot of candidates. But even without there being so many strict requirements, I felt like I was very much aligned for the position. Were there some things that I didn't have a lot of heavy experience on? No. I'm also very new to the career world, and I'm figuring out what it is that I want to do. So I'm just building up my experience. So I already knew that, and I was okay with that. Like, there was something specific that they wanted about like creating curriculum, and I haven't done that yet. I haven't had the opportunity to do that because I haven't been able to create the type of curriculum that I want to teach, which is about racism and inequity in the US. So I haven't had that experience yet, but it is something that I'm interested in and I'd be willing to learn. And that's okay. I didn't have that, what they were looking for, but I still applied for the job anyways, because I've learned that when it comes to applying for a job, women, especially women of color, feel like they're not going to apply for a job if they don't feel like they meet 100% of the requirements. And that is going to hold you back from so many opportunities. Like, we're not all perfect. We're not going to always have all the experience that everybody is looking for, especially nowadays. Like, it's getting harder and harder to find a job. Like, I feel like soon enough, it's going to be hard to get a job being at McDonald's. Not to shade anybody that works there, but I'm just like, yo, like, it's getting hard to find a job for no reason. Like, I just don't understand. But you know what? Anyways, so I applied for the job and I didn't get it. And I was just like shocked because I put a lot of faith in my application. I put a lot of faith in who I am. I put a lot of faith in what I do in and outside of work. And so to know that I wasn't getting that job, it really did, like, I shut down. And the friend I was on the phone with, I love her so much, and this is no shade to her at all. She gets emotional very quickly, and I'm the friend that doesn't handle emotions well. I'm kind of the one that just kind of sits there looking stiff, like, what do you want me to do? So I was like, she was consoling me and stuff, and I was like, thanks, I really appreciate it. But you could tell, like, my whole mood shifted, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get off the phone now because I'm going to go ahead and cry, and I need to go do that alone. And she's like, okay. She understands this. Like, we've been through this multiple times. She understands, like, I am not comfortable with expressing my emotions in front of people. I don't want to see people, like, express their emotions to that extent in front of me. I'm not comfortable with it. And that's a conversation for a different episode of the podcast, so stay tuned. But she lets me go, and I come into my apartment. I couldn't even hold back the tears. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I couldn't even hold back the tears. Walking into my apartment, I was parked right in front of my apartment. So I walk in and I just start crying immediately. And it was kind of like a medium hysterical cry. Like, I'm just going to get all into it. And I'm going to be honest because we've all been there. And if you haven't been there yet, you're going to be there. So I'm just going to let you know how real it is, what it really looks like. Okay, I couldn't hold my tears back. I started crying. I had just came back from a walk, so I don't like my outside clothes touching my indoor furniture. So I sat on the floor, not trying to be dramatic like in the movies, but I sat on the floor and I just cried because it felt like, okay, I felt everything that I listed. I felt like I was stuck. I felt like it was delaying future plans that I had already made. Like, if I had gotten this job, I was overwhelmed with feeling like I had to start all over because I didn't know where to go from there. And also, I felt all the emotions that I listed before about, like, I felt like I wasn't good enough for this job. I felt like I wasn't good enough for X, Y, and Z. And I really just took it personally for probably like the first 10 minutes. But there was something in the back of my mind that was just like, it's okay. Like, this wasn't for you. Like, the rejection is protection. You're going to get something better. This is freeing you up for something better. You have to be open to that. And don't get me wrong, everybody has been there where it's like, you just want to feel your fucking feelings and somebody's trying to be positive. And it's like, get out of my face. Let me just feel my feelings. Give me a minute and then come back to me when I'm a little more receptive. So that's how I felt the first 10 minutes. Like, as soon as I started crying, I'm like, don't cry. Like, like, this is just protection for something else. Like, you're going to be freed up for something more in alignment with what you're supposed to do. And I was like, I don't want to fucking hear that right now. In all seriousness, I'm upset. I'm sad. Like, I really wanted this job. I wanted to have the freedom that I was looking for. Like, this job had a lot of the things that I wanted. And to not get it made me feel like, well, damn, like, what am I supposed to do now? Especially because, like, I want a job that allows me to uplift people of color, that allows me to uplift voices of color, and so on and so forth, especially youth of color. And I feel like a lot of those jobs and a lot of those opportunities here in the U.S. are being, like, under attack. Like, they're trying to find ways to get rid of that. They're trying to find ways to get rid of diversity, inclusion, equity, uplifting voices of color. And it's really fucking frustrating. And I usually try not to curse that much in my podcast episodes, but in all seriousness, like, that shit is fucking frustrating because it's like, one, as a person of color who has to live with that, it's annoying to not have your voice be heard in the way that you want it to, because there are so many outside forces trying to shut that shit down. One, and two, it's annoying because it's like, I wholeheartedly believe that is my purpose. I'm supposed to help other people of color uplift their voices, speak their truth, and get to where they want to be. I'm still doing that myself, but that, I feel like, is my purpose. I'm supposed to be helping others do that as well. So the fact that I felt like that's already being under attack in the US, like we can see, I was frustrated because I'm just like, okay, this job felt very one of a kind. Like, I haven't found another organization that does what this organization does in this way. And I was just like, I don't know where to go from here. And another one of my friends calls me while I'm crying. And so I answered the phone and I told her, like, I didn't get the job. And my friends all knew, like, how much I wanted this job. They were all like, you'd be the perfect fit for this job, and so on and so forth. And so when she was like, well, do you think that you can look into other companies that do the same thing? I was just sitting there like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. Like, I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I don't know the answer to that, just because, like, there are so many companies getting rid of DEI work. There's so many companies that are, like, not as invested in DEI work as I want to be. And I don't want to be the person that goes into a company, is super invested in the DEI work, and I'm not getting backed up with the work that I'm trying to do. I don't want to have to experience that. I don't want to have to do all that extra work, because it's just like, if they're not also invested in what it is that I'm trying to do and the efforts that I'm trying to put forth for their organization, that's going to make my job harder. I'm going to be burnt out, and I'm going to be frustrated, and I'm going to want to leave. I'm going to be unhappy. So I just told her, like, I don't know. And I honestly do hope that there's another organization that allows me to do the things that I want to do, work from home, pays me well, and the organization supports what it is that I'm trying to do, because that is my purpose. I don't want to take another job just because I have bills to pay. Times are tough. Don't get me wrong. I completely get that everything is costing more and more bread out here, and I don't have it. I do not have it. Listen, but I'm just tired. I'm only 23. Like, I'm not even 24 yet, y'all. I'm only 23, and I'm already tired of just taking jobs just to take jobs for them to pay my bills. At some point, I just be like, man, fuck a job, respectfully. Like, I know that's probably super unprofessional to say on this podcast, especially because I know some people from my job be listening to this, whatever. You know what? Fuck a job. Like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not aligned with my purpose. I'm not living a life that is fulfilling to me. Whether it's like, even if the job, my dream job, just wasn't remote, I would still be living in my purpose, and the company would have all the things that I wanted. So I'd still be able to have a work-life balance. I'd be okay with that. But because we're not seeing a lot of that, like, I don't want to take a job just to pay my bills. I want to live my life. I want to have a job that fulfills my purpose, that pays me well, that allows me to live my life. I don't have to schedule all these things around my job. No, my job is a small entity of my life. And I feel like living in the US, we've created this culture where it's like your job is supposed to be, quote unquote, everything. Everything you do, everything that you make out of it. Like, you are that job. And without that job, without that title, you are nothing. Conversation for a whole nother episode. I don't want to keep rambling about that. But long story short, with my recent experience about rejection, I felt all the things. I felt very stuck. I felt like I had to come up with a new game plan, and I was overwhelmed because it's just like, well, what do I look for? I don't even know what it is that I'm looking for. I know exactly what it is that I want to do. I don't know how to get there, though. And I have to come up with a whole new game plan? Man, forget it. But whatever. Anyways, I ended up talking to my other friend on the phone while I was still crying. And eventually, I got over it and I wiped my tears away. And I was just like, I have to believe that not getting this job was protection for me. Not getting this job only meant that I was going to get a job that was better than this one. I have to believe that, because if I sit here and feed these negative thoughts of like, oh, there's something wrong with me, like because I don't have this much experience or whatever the case may be, I didn't get this job, and therefore it's going to prevent me from getting other jobs. It is going to prevent me from moving at some point, and it's going to prevent me from being able to afford my dream apartment or build my own home or whatever. I'm not trying to feed those negative thoughts, because as a girly with anxiety, I'm not even trying to make it look cute, but hey, that's me. As somebody with anxiety, the thoughts will spiral, and it's like if I feed one thought, think of it like when you feed like an animal or like a bird specifically. When you feed one bird, man, do the other birds start flocking. Like, I want some too. And that's how I feel about my negative thoughts. If I feed one, all of a sudden, boom, now I got a bunch of other negative thoughts. I can't have that. So I've really been working on training myself and training my brain to be like, all right, we have one negative thought. We can't have that, because once we have one and we feed it, boom, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do now. I'm sulking and I'm experiencing a depressive episode and I don't know what to do. So I've just been telling myself, this rejection was for a reason, it's for a purpose. I can't take it too personally. I know that there's things that I need to work on, not even just professionally, but personally, and that's never a bad thing. Like, to want to grow as a person is a good thing. Focus on one thing at a time, and always remember that you're never going to be perfect, and that's okay. But I know that there are things that I need to work on to be more competitive, especially in this job market. I feel like everybody is looking for a job right now. But it's okay. I know that the job that I'm built for will find its way to me. I'm going to find my way to it. So I picked my ass up off the floor, and I started thinking about ways that I could be seen by recruiters that are going to help me get the types of jobs that I want. I've been posting more on LinkedIn. I've just really been focusing on pouring into my podcast, coming up with new ideas for the episode, because this is in alignment with what it is that I want to do. So I'm putting more energy into this and reminding myself, like, it is all going to be worth it in the end. I don't give a fuck if I made a cent off of this podcast. If this podcast is helping people, that's all I care about. That is all that I care about. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next point. What is the biggest lesson that I've learned from rejection? In all honesty, the lesson that I've learned and that I'm still teaching myself is that rejection is protection from things that you cannot see. And it is very hard to see that in the moment when you get rejected, especially by something or someone that you are so invested in. But it really does keep you from things that are not in alignment with you and your purpose, or whatever the case may be, and you need to let it rock. Don't push something that has already been rejected. Like, think of any rejection as like being rejected from a job. Once you get rejected from a job, 9 times out of 10, very rarely do I've been hearing about this lately, but very rarely do people email the recruiter and be like, oh, I feel like you made a mistake or whatever the case may be. Nah, you just kind of be like, all right, I flopped. It was a flop. Like, let's take the L and move on. You have to start thinking about all types of rejections like that. Like, okay, I didn't get this opportunity. That's okay. What can I learn from this opportunity and move forward? And I want to just take a quick moment to address the people part of rejection. I'm not going to touch on that too much because it's just like, I don't really know if that's the type of episode I'm leaning into. But like, getting rejected by somebody is a whole new different ballgame. It really is, which is why I don't want to touch on it too much on this episode. But what I will say is that, let's say you have an interest in somebody. You have a love interest in somebody. Y'all were good friends. Everything was going great. It seemed like both parties were invested, but one party says that, oh, like, I'm just not interested in you like that. Like, I'm not really feeling you like that. That is a hard pill to swallow, like any form of rejection. But do not force it. Do not force it. All you're going to do is continue hurting yourself and hurting your own feelings. And it's just going to make the situation uncomfortable for you and that person that has rejected you. Rejection is uncomfortable for the person who is giving out the rejection. Most likely, sometimes there are people who don't give a fuck. And also for the person who is receiving the rejection. Once you start forcing the rejection or trying to turn the no into a yes, it becomes an even more uncomfortable situation. Take the L and gracefully bow out and move on. It's okay. You're going to find the person that's for you, whether that's with friends, family, or relationships. If you get rejected by your family, you're going to find another family. They may not be blood relatives, but you will find your chosen family, and that's okay. You had friends, and all of a sudden you get rejected from your friends. You will make new friends. You will make high-quality friends. You will have better friends. Don't force it. I've definitely been in a situation where I forced rejection, and all it did was backfire on me, and it took me a long time to heal from that. It took me way longer than it would have if I had just let it go and just been like, whatever, let me let it rock. But because I didn't, all I did was drag out the path for myself. And I really don't want that for nobody. You know what I mean? I definitely don't want to do that for myself. Again, I know exactly what that feels like. If you haven't been there yet, please listen to me. Please do not drag out rejection from somebody. And that's all I'm going to say about the person aspect. But going back to getting rejected from like your dream job or your dream school especially, like, you have to understand that there is a better opportunity. There's a reason you're not going to this job or you're not going to this school, and that's okay. And you don't know when you're going to get that blessing. In all honesty, like, we want things to work out like right then and there. Like, okay, I got rejected from this job, but the next day I get a job that's even better. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. As much as we want it to, it doesn't work that way. We're on God's timing. If you believe in faith, apply this to your own spirituality, your own faith, how you see fit. We're all on God's timing. As much as we would love to be rejected from one thing and then have a new option the next day, what do we learn from that? Nothing. So it's just like, you got to take the rejection and understand like there's something coming better down the path. It might take a month. It might take 2 months. It might take a year, but it's going to happen. And if we don't have that time span between when we got rejected and when we got the blessing, we learn nothing. That time in between when we got rejected and when we got the blessing is where we learn the most, when we develop the most, when we grow the most, and when we appreciate the blessing even more. If I got rejected from that dream job and got another job that was very similar the next day, I would have been like, whatever. Hey, I got me a new job. I'm out of here. I'm making more money. I'm working remote. I'm going on vacation. That's exactly what I would have said. But because it hasn't worked out like that for me, I'm just understanding, like, it was a flop. That's all right. I'm going to take this L and move on. But I'm learning stuff in the process. I'm learning stuff in the process about myself. I'm learning stuff in the process about how to be more marketable for the types of jobs that I'm looking for. And I'm also just learning to be more grateful for the blessings that I'm receiving throughout the journey. And honestly, that is the biggest lesson that you could learn from rejection. Don't force it, number one. So I'm going to turn to 2 things. Don't force it, and understand that it is protection. And I'm going to add another one, Understand that there will be a blessing that replaces that feeling that you had when you received the rejection. And you will be so grateful for the blessing. You'll be even more grateful than if you had just received it with no rejection. So those are the three things that I would say I've learned from my experiences about rejection. If I could give y'all advice about handling rejection, my two pieces of advice would be get used to it. Listen, honey. We all getting rejected out here, like in some way, shape, or form. It's going to happen. We are unprotected from rejection. Like we cannot shield ourselves from it. It's going to happen at some point, whether it's from a person, a job, a home, a car. Maybe you can't even get your dream car for whatever reason. It's gonna happen. We're all gonna get rejected from something, and there's really nothing we can do about it but learn from that situation and move on, because we're going to get another blessing in its place at some point anyway. So learn from it in the process so that you can be prepared for the blessing and you can appreciate the blessing. So be comfortable with being uncomfortable in terms of the rejection. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't get accepted into everything, or you can't accept everything. Let's talk about that. Giving out rejection is hard as hell for some people, right? If somebody's so used to not having options and then all of a sudden they got options and now they got to start telling people, places, and whatever, oh, I can't work here. I can't date you because I'm dating someone. So I can't go to this school because this other school has given me more money and they have a better program, or whatever it is. Maybe you going to school for the party culture. Hey, I'm not going to school because of this. When you start giving out rejection and you're used to not having options, that's just uncomfortable. Listen, when I got the job that I had now, I had a couple of different options, all at different schools, because I work in the education field doing various things. And I was just like, I don't know how to send a rejection email and be like, I'm not taking this job. Every job that I've gotten so far, like, it was pretty much the only option. I didn't have options for me at the time. So the fact that I was starting to have more options now, it was just like, damn, well, I don't know how to say thanks but no thanks in a nice way. And that's something that is very hard. Like, there are a lot of people that I feel like can align with this. When you are so used to not having options, it is very hard to suddenly have options and not know what to do with them. Even if you have an idea of, like, I know I want this job and I have all these other options. How do I tell these other options? Nah, sis, it's not happening. I appreciate it, but I'm going to gracefully bow out and go with this one. So that's another thing that's hard. But another piece of advice that I would give for handling rejection is just train your brain, train yourself to believe that the rejection is for a reason, is for a purpose, and is for a positive purpose. You are going to get something better. You're going to get a better apartment. You're going to get a better job. You're going to go to a better school. You're going to have a better partner, friend, family member, so on and so forth. Rejection is protection. Rejection is protection. Rejection is protection. I cannot say it enough. It is protecting you from something that you would have never even have known about. And that's the blessing of it all. Like, you're getting protected from something that you don't even know about. You don't even need to know about, because it's not even any of your business. You don't even need to worry about it, because you're not going there. You're not going with that person, and that's all right. So those are my two pieces of advice. Get comfortable with it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. You're going to receive rejection and give out rejection. But also understand that it is for your own protection. It's for your own benefit. And be grateful for it. And it's going to be hard to feel that in the moment. Like I told in the story, at first I was like, damn, don't nobody want to fucking hear that. Like, let me just be mad. Let me just be mad. And that's okay. I'm human. I'm normal. You know what I mean? But once you get past that, tell yourself, all right, now that I've calmed down, I've let my emotions out, because your emotions are only temporary. My rejection has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with making sure that I get protected from something I know nothing about. I don't know if you can hear my hands rubbing if you're on like Spotify, but I hope you did. You know, I wouldn't be me if I didn't talk about either therapy or shadow work. For this episode specifically, I'm going to be talking about some shadow work prompts for rejection. A lot of us have associated rejection with something that's negative, and we've also associated it with our own self-esteem and our own self-worth. So I found and created some shadow work prompts about rejection to help you understand where those feelings came from, why it might be such a hard pill to swallow, and ways that you can start shifting the narrative for yourself about rejection. So I have I have 5 total, and I'm going to go ahead and read them out. And I think I'm going to answer one of them, depending on how long this is, because I'm trying to keep this on a time frame. So number 1, what are your thoughts about rejection or being rejected? Do you believe rejection is tied to your self-worth and your self-esteem? Name a time where you were rejected and it impacted your self-esteem. Name a time where you were rejected and you received a blessing in disguise or in its place. How did it make you feel? And would you have done anything differently? And number 5, write a letter to a person who has rejected you, expressing your gratitude for the blessing and the lesson you received because of the rejection. I think the one I want to answer is number 2. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but it is going to be a little bit personal because I like to keep it real here, So number 2 is, do you believe being rejected is tied to your self-worth or your self-esteem? I lied. I don't want to answer number 2. I wanted to answer number 3. Name a time where you were rejected and it impacted your self-esteem. I don't think that I've ever talked about this on my podcast, but if you haven't picked up on it by now, I never talk about my parents, and this will probably be the only time that I talk about my parents. I was rejected by my parents at a very young age, and I didn't grow up with either one of them. I grew up with my grandma instead, and that abandonment and that rejection from my parents really did shape my self-esteem, because you notice that stuff very early on. I think adults don't give a lot of credit to kids in terms of how much that they know or notice. And so I noticed very quickly that I don't have parents. I have somebody that takes care of me, and my grandma did the best that she could with what she knew, and she was my mom, my dad, and everything. But I don't have like my biological mom around. I don't have my biological dad around. And that really didn't impact my self-esteem, because it had me believing that, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, why don't my parents want to be a part of my life? Why don't my parents want to raise me? Why do they have other kids, but they don't want to take care of me? And it really did affect my self-esteem for such a long, long time, because just growing up, seeing people who had really good and healthy relationships with their parents and knowing that that was something I was never going to have, it was a hard pill to swallow, and sometimes it is still a little bit difficult to think about. Excuse me, I'm stuttering. It is a difficult thing to think about, just because it is hard. Like, yes, I had somebody there who took care of me and stuff, but like, as a child, and we all are being run by our inner child, you always wonder, like, what could have been, like, what would my life have looked like if they cared about me and took care of me and stuff like that. And so it did affect my self-esteem, and it took me a long time to realize, like, my parents weren't supposed to be my parents for a reason, and they weren't supposed to raise me for a reason, and my life would look very differently if I went with one of them, because they're not together. So if I went with one or the other, my life would look very differently, and I'd have no idea who I would be. And I'm pretty happy with who I am right now. I'm pretty happy with the journey that I've taken up to this point. Of course, there are things that I wish didn't happen. There are things that I wish I did differently. But for the most part, like, I wouldn't rewrite my entire story. I wouldn't really change where I grew up and who I grew up with, because it has shaped me to be the person that I am. And I'm happy with the person that I am. So I will admit, like, anybody who is not being raised by their parents, I'm sure you feel the same way, and if you don't, like, I don't want to assume, but it is hard. It's a hard hit on your self-esteem to feel like, like, why aren't they there for me, especially when you see other people who have good relationships with their parents. But that was an experience with rejection that I had very, very early on that affected my self-esteem. So it made rejection from other people specifically, not even necessarily opportunities, but more specifically people. It made rejection from people very hard, because I had already had that experience with 2 of the most significant people in my life. And so it affected how I moved about relationships and stuff like that. But I'm older and I'm wiser, and I've understood that I can't change them. I can't change my story. I don't want to change my story. And all I can do is make sure that I do better for myself and that I break the generational patterns that I'm coming from, and really just work on my self-esteem and understand like their choices and their decisions of whether or not they wanted to be a part of my life has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. I was a child. They're the adult, and that's okay. And I'm not putting this out there, to put them on blast or to shade them for whatever the case may be. For the most part, I would say 90%. I've made peace with the fact that this is my life. I've done a very good job for myself. I've done a very good job with a lot of people who have helped me along the way, family members, friends, loved ones, so on and so forth. And so I'm not shading them in any way, shape, or form. I'm just being honest. And I think it's important for me to be a little bit vulnerable and honest about my experiences, because if I don't do that on this podcast and I just highlight all the good throughout this journey of making it out of the hood and getting to where I want to be, I'm creating a false narrative for people who are also going to do the same thing. And so I just thought it was important to be a little more vulnerable and just be real. Moving on. We're at that point where we've reached the affirmation for this week. And so the affirmation for this week is: rejection is protection from the unseen. I know a blessing is on the way. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this 3 times. If you have the ability to close your eyes, close your eyes. If you want to write this down, however you want to find a way to speak this positivity on your life, find a way to do it. So, rejection is protection from the unseen. I know a blessing is on the way. Rejection is protection from the unseen. I know a blessing is on the way. Rejection is protection from the unseen. I know a blessing is on the way. All right, y'all. That's all I have for you for the end of this episode. Let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about rejection? Is this something that you find negative, or are you one of the rare few that finds it to be a positive thing? If so, leave a comment on the YouTube page at the Hood Soft Life Podcast, or you can DM me on Instagram at the HSL Pod. If you're not listening to this on Spotify, you can also check us out there at the Hood Soft Life Podcast. And we also have a TikTok at the HSL Pod. I'm doing my best to manage as many platforms as possible. The most active platform in terms of like short form content that I'm on right now is Instagram. I'm going to try to do better for y'all on TikTok, I promise. But let me know what your thoughts are about rejection. Let me know, is there something that you're doing differently to handle rejection, to learn that rejection is a positive thing? Leave me some comments down below and leave me some ideas for some things that you want to hear about. I want to respond to some of the ideas that you have and talk about some of the topics that you'd be interested in. So leave those down below. I hope that you learn nothing more but the fact that rejection is protection, and I had to say it one more time, and that your self-esteem is not tied to rejection at all. You are worthy, you are capable enough, you are good enough, and rejection has nothing to do with that. So, I'm gonna catch you on the next episode. Bye.